this is Michaela,
And Gretel.
and this is the Vet Files. Today we're doing a reflective episode about our pre-vet journeys, our regrets, some of our best moments, and some common questions that we get as both PVMA officers or just seniors in our majors. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yes, so I am Gretel Werdeck. I'm the previous APVMA president. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'll be attending University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine starting this fall. And I'm just about to graduate from University of Illinois.
Yeah, and my name's Michaela Buchel. I was the 2024-2025 APVMA webmaster, which is now called the Public Relations Chair, thank goodness. So we met, and as officers, I go to Auburn right now, she goes to Illinois, so we would have never met or never crossed paths if we had not had the APVMA and run for that position last minute. But we kind of started the interview series as a way to engage the national audience. We were hoping to expand the roles of the APVMA officer team, and that was one of the ideas that we had in kind of like August. We interviewed Dr. Adam Christman, Dr. Emily King, Dr. Kemba Marshall, and we hope to have them back on the podcast now that it's just us two and we're not affiliated with APVMA anymore. But today we just kind of wanted to talk about ourselves, questions, and just through that stuff as we're entering this transition period from being a pre-vet to a vet student and, kind of our hopes, goals, etc. I hope to be a mixed animal rural practice, and I think Gretel wants to be mixed animal as well, correct?
Yeah, I do. I really don't want to turn away clients, at least when I first start, because we are having gaps in the industry that need to be filled. I didn't grow up with large animals, but I'm a big lover of the small ruminants, and equine is like my favorite. Also, companion animals, how could you not love them? And pocket pets I grew up with, so I want to be able to help them as well.
Yay! Yeah, I feel the same way, never turning an animal away, but also it's so hard to choose a specialty. There's nothing that I've ever, other than reproductive physiology, there's nothing that I've ever seen that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just so passionate about that. And I think as a large animal vet, a lot of what you do is repro anyway, so I don't see any point in specializing. That's kind of my choice of why I went into that. I grew up on a ranch, etc. I've had pocket pets, I've obviously had dogs and cats my whole life, so that was a simple decision for me. I've never really wanted to do anything else. So I also kind of wanted to highlight some of our best experiences, but also some of the negatives of being a pre-vet and the challenges that we face. So Gretel, would you want to start off on a good note and talk about some of your favorite things?
Yes. So I've had a pretty broad range. My goal, so when I went into undergrad, my mindset was like, oh, I only want to do equine, small animal is not as interesting to me. But I quickly learned, that's not the right approach. You need to go in open-minded. I started out in the small animal ICU and intermediate care, and funny enough, the only time slot that was available were weekend nights. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. And for a freshman in college, most would turn that down, but I was elated to have time in the clinic. So that shows a little bit about my personal life. But it gave me structure, it gave me hours. It was funny because people would go out and they would party and they wouldn't feel well the rest of the week. But I felt alive and like I was learning every weekend. And it didn't matter to me. So that's just one fun thing I've done. It was really fun for me. I have taken weekends off from now on, but freshman year, because you're in a dorm, you don't really know a ton of people. It gave me a lot of structure that I really liked. What about you, Michaela? What did you do freshman year?
Freshman fall, my parents were they cautioned me. They were like, oh, let's not get a job freshman fall. Let's focus on school, because I had worked all throughout high school and I'm known to overwork myself. And they were like, let's not do that. So I did not get a job freshman fall, but I went ahead and set up a job for freshman spring. So I started freshman spring at the Swine Research and Educational Center at Auburn, and it was so fun. I obviously had experience showing pigs, so I was comfortable with the species. But I went from the livestock show exhibitor aspect, which is 100% totally, completely different from the swine industry as a whole. If you didn't know, I didn't know. I figured, but I didn't know how different it was until I got into it. So Auburn's swine unit is a farrow to finish operation, which means we breed them there, they are born there, and we finish them there until they go literally across the street to be butchered or sold to whatever company that we're working with that week. And, you know, I learned all about the 5-week cycle that they used and kind of how they do things. Every practice is different. But I thought that was really interesting. And after freshman year, I really needed vet hours. I graduated high school with 150 volunteer hours at my local clinic. It was in the middle of nowhere. They didn't have the bandwidth or the funds to pay me, so that was really discouraging that I couldn't get hours. So I worked as a waitress in high school, and I knew that it was time for me to start getting hours. You always hear crazy numbers like, I had 3,000 hours, I had 7,000 hours. That seems impossible. But I think I got in with under 1,000 hours at the end of the day because I had such unique experiences, and I only graduated in 3 years. So sophomore fall, I got a job at a small animal clinic, and I hated it. I really, really hated it. I thought I would like it, and I just didn't. It's not my place. I was not happy. I think I worked 40 hours in 2 weeks and then quit. So obviously I won't mention the name of it or discourage anybody from going into small animal. It's just that wasn't a good fit for me. And then I started working at Auburn University's vet school as a necropsy technician, which was crazy. And I'm still there today, except now I'm a hostess. I went back into the service industry to get some money before vet school. So couldn't recommend that enough. But Gretel, what did you do after your freshman year?
So after freshman year, it was funny. Well, it wasn't funny. Now I think it's funny. They weren't able to train students again. Unfortunately, the small animal hospital where I was working decided to not bring back any students. 30 of us were out of a job. And it's one of those moments in life you're like, why would this be happening to me? I've worked so hard. So then I had to look elsewhere. And I mean, I was crushed. I was like, my hours. But I had reached the point of that job because they had a lot of restrictions there where I couldn't really learn anymore. That's why I think it's okay, because it forced me to move on to something else. So I started working at the research horse farm on campus, and I had just done stallion collection in the spring. So that was the spring of my freshman year. And that was hilarious, physically demanding. All my friends who aren't in vet med make fun of me for it for years because they think it's really funny. But I got my arms like tripled, and so working on the horse farm just became so much easier after stallion collection. And then because I had done stallion collection, I got hired as one of the only veterinary assistants in the entire large animal hospital for equine theriogenology, and I loved it. But it was tough. I mean, 4 to 5 days a week. My shift started at 6 a.m., which I know, Michaela, you've probably had experience with. And I was on call, so I always had to be available. Sometimes in the middle of the nights, I pulled 12-hour overnights, sometimes throughout the year, mostly in the summer, and I loved it. And even though you're tired, the moment of like the water breaks and you have to pull a full out, you forget. And it's the most amazing cycle of life. So that was my sophomore year. What about you? What else have you done? Well, I guess you've had your 3 years. That's absolutely amazing. Oh my gosh, I never would have felt prepared.
Sometimes I seriously think about my choices and graduating early. I just had a conversation with a fellow pre-vet student who's a freshman at Auburn, and she's thinking about graduating early, and she was like, would you recommend? And I was like, honestly, it depends on the person. That's something I get a lot of questions about. I think if I did not have such an extensive background, like living on a ranch and working with animals, oh my goodness, no, I would not feel prepared. But because I grew up in the environment, I showed animals, I showed pigs, goats, I was around cows, literally anything I could have asked for through the FFA, but also I was at home. Like, I went home and there were animals. So I feel decent, probably as much as, you feel decent about going into working with large animals and small animals. But I don't think I would recommend it to somebody who didn't get a lot of animal experience hours prior to college, no. I think that's going to be my final advice on that. That's kind of what I told the girl I was talking to earlier. And she said, yeah, no problem, I've got a couple thousand hours of experience. I was like, cool, then do it. Why not cut off a year of tuition and whatnot? So I also had a couple jobs. I worked as an anatomy teaching assistant, helping graduate students teach anatomy lab for Human Anatomy and Physiology 1. And then I also had a job as an agricultural orientation leader for our freshman orientation camps. And I was the only pre-vet AOL, so I got a ton of questions from parents, etc. So that's why I feel good to talk about kind of the FAQs that I got as a pre-vet student, and things like that. You mentioned it was really challenging pulling those 12-hour shifts. I agree with that. I've been called to go pick up bodies or accept bodies for necropsy literally New Year's Eve, 10 p.m. I don't know why they decided they needed to do it then, but it's already dead. I kind of question people's kind choices sometimes. It makes sense for theory of genealogy because you can't control the horse, but
No.
when you're a human and you're bringing in a dead animal at 3 p.m. on New Year's Eve, sometimes I just question. Anyway,
I don't
so
like
what were some other challenges that you want to talk about?
I always felt like I didn't have enough of things. So in my senior year, like going the summer into my senior year, I was like, okay, what am I missing from my application? So for our listeners that don't know, most veterinary schools use a point system. And you get more points for categories like working with different species, exotics, small animal. Of course, you get some for that. Everyone does small for the most part. Large animal. If you've done anything like pathology, that's really cool and interesting. So I was like, what am I missing? I've been running PVC programs. It's our pre-vet club, and I did APVMA co-chair. I'm like, okay, so I have a bunch of small events. That's really helpful because that lets you get different categories. But I was like, but I have like no exotics. So I did World Bird Sanctuary over the summer. In their hospital, and I absolutely loved it. That was incredibly outside of my comfort zone. And then I did more research. My stallion collection freshman year was research, but I hadn't touched research since. So that was always a really big insecurity because I was like, well, it's like everyone I know has been in a research lab for like 2 years, and that wasn't me. So I picked up an osteoarthritis research lab that was very enjoyable for horses in my fall. And I didn't apply with that many research hours, but I at least got to show that I was starting another research job. So that was one of my challenges. I felt I didn't have enough research. I don't know if you felt like you were missing anything from your application to Kaylin.
I definitely felt low in GPA. I think I've talked about this on the interview series with APVMA, but I'm considered low GPA, which feels ridiculous because I have a 3.45. I know that's not the lowest you ever heard, but that's including my dual credit community college gen ed courses. Without that, my Auburn GPA is a 3.09. So that was definitely on the lower end for sure, but obviously I didn't have too much of a problem. I applied to 12 schools overall, and almost all of the negative feedback I got was on my GPA. But the ones that didn't talk about my GPA, really talked about they wanted me to get more hours. Like I said, I had under 1,000 hours. So it's like the GPA focused schools didn't want me because my GPA is too low, and the hours focused schools didn't want me because my hours were too low. And that makes total sense. I wasn't expecting to get in anyway. I've mentioned this to every pre-vet that I talked to, but I was like breaking down crying. Like I didn't think I was going to get in this year. Everybody was telling me, oh my God, you're not going to get in with that. You're not going to get in with that. When I was going through the application cycle. So in the summer, I had a, kind of a sit-down, I called a sit-down conversation. But I was on the phone with my parents, and my dad just told me, I'll never forget it, but he told me, you can't win the lotto if you don't buy a ticket. And that is what I tell every pre-vet student. If you have the financial resources to apply and you meet the prerequisites, apply to 1 or 2 schools, apply to your dream schools. I never, ever thought I was going to get into LSU because of their GPA average or their stats, etc. Honestly, I tell them not to look at the stats. That was something I really struggled with, was comparing myself to their averages, and it's, that's an average. You can definitely, as long as you meet the minimum GPA cutoff, you're okay to apply. As far as things I was missing, other than that, because of the 3 years, experience, etc., I think that I was missing small animal experience. Like I said, I had 150 hours mixed animal in high school, and then I had like 40 hours working with live small animals, and then I had like 400 hours working with necropsy. So I felt like I was missing in that area, but it's something that's so easily gained. I didn't see that being an issue. And then I also felt like I was missing research as well. I applied with 0. I'm not getting 0 research hours. It is not an interest of mine. Auburn was an R1 institution, which means one of their primary focuses when they hire staff, when they, look at funding for the year, etc., is research. Research, research, research. It's hard to find a professor at Auburn that doesn't conduct some sort of research, and it was super discouraging hearing, oh yeah, I got into this research lab, I got into this research lab, and I just never had an interest. And that was so frustrating to me because I was like, there's not a research lab on campus that fits my interests, whether it was in the ag, college or not. I just couldn't find one that fit me, so I never applied, and I thought that that was going to be a downfall because everybody at Auburn was like, oh my God, you're getting 0 hours, you're not getting it. So it depends on the college, but we have found out that's not true. So yeah. What are a couple questions that you've gotten from pre-veterinary students that you think are really big and important, but not really talked as much about? We get a lot of questions about how many hours do I need, how many this, how many that. What are some unique ones you've heard?
A lot of the times people want to know like class recommendations, and I honestly say that yes, they look at your classes and if they align, but I think more of their interest is in like how did you perform in those classes. So I tell people like take what you want and then also maybe take some things that are going to prepare you better for vet school. Like you have a growth and development class here that was incredibly helpful. What I've heard, I haven't gone to vet school yet. And then physiology of stress and disease, really like nailing your anatomy and physiology classes. And I know that anatomy and physiology can be really tough, but repetition, drawing it out on a notebook, understanding it is the biggest thing. Like when you go through those classes, try to understand it because you're not going to remember all the small details when you're going into vet school, but you can remember systematically how it works. So that's what I would recommend because people ask me about courses a lot.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, I was just talking to people working an event today, and one of the most interesting pieces of advice, I mentioned this in APVMA, but I don't write speeches and I don't have anything prepared when I start talking to people. So every time I talk to a new pre-vet, something new comes out of my mouth and I'm like, oh, I've never thought about that before, actually. So they were asking me on, should I get a minor? I got that question a lot as an orientation leader from the parents and the students. I would say if you have the time in your schedule to do it, I kind of had to be a full-time student at Auburn because I had done all of my prereqs in high school. And I did a minor in agribusiness. I thought it was interesting and I was like, you know what, this will be so applicable to opening my own practice one day, whatever. That is true. I learned so much. I met so many people. I loved my minor, but I think I would have had more fun minoring in something I was genuinely passionate about, not that I thought would look good on my application or that, might be relevant. I wish I had done rural sociology. That's the one that I wish. Some people might have an interest in art, history, photography, whatever. I would say, I told somebody earlier, do whatever you feel passionate. If you get a minor, do something you're passionate about, not that you think will look good. Auburn is offering a new public health and One Health minor and major, so a lot of people are going to that just because they think it'll look good. Sure, it looks good, but is it going to stand out from any other Auburn undergraduate applying to their program? Not really. So I kind of told this person, I was like, they want to see your passions and they want to see that you have a life outside of vet med, even though that seems impossible. I would say, I talked a lot about my art business. I used to sell my own art and like paint, I play guitar, I'm super into my creative side. They want to see that you have that. And whenever I say they, I just mean any admissions officer, etc. that I've listened to, talked to in real life, that kind of person. I'm not just saying the general public. I'm talking about admissions people that Gretel and I have met through the national position or just that I've talked to at my previous symposiums or face-to-face for interviews, etc. So that's one of the most interesting ones that I've got for sure.
I really liked you talking about things when you applied. Like, I had this, but I didn't have that. And when people are asking about what classes should I take, what should I focus on, where should I work, what looks better, this or that. And I've met a lot of students, and like burnout starts when you start turning away things that bring you joy. And you start sacrificing those because you think it will look better. I'm going to bring up like a quick story that's going to show you exactly what I've been doing since then. So in high school, I took band. I played the trumpet. I was horrible. To this day, some people can read notes and know exactly how it's going to sound. I can't. That part of my brain does not process. And I was horrible at the trumpet, but I've loved art my entire life. And it also, like you, Michaelan, it comes more naturally to you. So I took band because I thought it would look better for college. And I hated it. I would go to class freaked out and scared, and it gave me a miserable 2 years. I learned a little bit about music, but I wasn't happy. I regretted not doing drawing because all my friends, they became so much better than I ever was because they got to practice and practice and practice. And so when it got to the time I had to wait till junior year in college to take a drawing class, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a really big switch because when you stop doing something that you love, your brain forgets how to do it. So I had to rewire my brain how to sit and draw for hours, and it wasn't as enjoyable because it was work. So if you love something, continue it, because otherwise you're going to be terrified and you're going to be burnt out. Going into college, I said, no, I'm going to do what I want. I will branch out and I will try. But like you said, you looked at research labs. It's not like you were ignorant. You researched them and you're like, this is not a good fit for me. I interviewed for multiple labs, got the job offer, and then I turned them down because it just did not feel right to me. Like, go with your gut. If you know you're going to be miserable, if you're in a room without windows all day, every day, with a pipetter, and that is not your favorite thing in life, then don't do it. Go where you are going to grow. That's my advice to anyone looking if they should do this or that. What makes you happiest? Because everyone applying is going to have hours in a clinic for the most part. Everyone applying probably has research, or they've shadowed someone, or they've taken their standard courses. Like, be you, stand out. And that's what helped me. So I was not the perfect applicant either. Like Michaelin was talking about grades, I also had some problematic times. Like when I took general chemistry, it was all online, all on Zoom, and I suffered. I ended with C pluses in the first two, and I had an advisor tell me, she no longer works at the school, that I was never going to get into veterinary school after my freshman. How dare you say that to someone who's at the start of their college career, just because I had 2 C pluses? So, I mean, that killed me mentally for like 2 years. I always thought, oh, I'm trying my best, but there's no way. And I ended with like a 3.66 overall GPA and a 3.56 science GPA, which wasn't great, but it was still competitive. And I ended up getting into 4 veterinary schools. And I stuck to what I wanted to do, and I kept an open mind, and I went where I felt valued, and it worked. So don't listen to everyone. Like Michaelin said, don't always pay attention to the stats. Try to stay competitive, though. That doesn't mean slack off. That means try your hardest in your classes. School comes first, always. There are some sacrifices to be made, but you are valued in multiple places. Do not believe people who are counting down on you. Sorry, I went on a rant, Michaelin, but what are some of the biggest life lessons you've learned?
I'm sure that we're both really passionate about this, so I am sure that we will do a full episode on this one day. But having an open mind and staying open to any opportunity that comes to your plate. About and opening yourself up to things that are a little bit uncomfortable. When you first started in the ICU, that was probably really scary. You're probably like, oh my god, like emergencies, etc. And that's kind of how I felt with necropsy. Obviously, like, I lived on a ranch, I had seen dead animals, but cutting something open, like in a graphic description, cutting something open, putting your hands in it, and like really getting in there, like getting in the trenches, was so scary at first, and honestly, it smelled bad, and I was like, ooh, I don't know what I got myself into, but it ended up being one of my favorite experiences, and I tell everybody I talk to, if they have the opportunity to do a necropsy, even if it's just once, but oh my gosh, anatomy and physiology, I was taking that class while I was doing that, and I can't tell you how much that helped, because obviously at Auburn we're required to take human anatomy and physiology, but I was cutting open animals. Sorry, that always sounds so graphic. It's not that well, it is that graphic.
I love necropsy too.
It's so fun. I know at APVMA Symposium, the past 2 have offered some sort of necropsy lab, so definitely recommend that, just to get the exposure, even if you hate it, absolutely hate it, and never do it again. But we'll talk about opportunities and, being open-minded in the future, but I think that is one of my best lessons that I learned. I think I pride myself in always being open, and that applies to anything from yourself and being open-minded to the opportunities that come to you, but also being open-minded conversations and really like taking other people's feelings, thoughts, actions into consideration when you're working with other people. Be somebody that they look at the schedule and they're like, oh my goodness, Michaelin's working today. I'm so excited to work with her.
Exactly. I do want people to know, like, it's not abnormal if you've worked in a clinic and the environment was not right for you. That doesn't mean the veterinary field is not right for you. Like, I've worked for doctors before where I have not slept, where I was always on call. Sorry, my dog's being ridiculous in the background. And everything is great until the second you do something wrong. Know that you are an undergrad, or maybe you might even be in high school listening to this. You are not a doctor. You do not have the ability to read their mind. Like, that is a them problem if they do not train you properly. And I've had to put up walls and boundaries so that I can feel better and have grace about myself messing up at work. Because I'm sure you know, McKaylin, like, even when you do a necropsy, even though they're dead, you want to do it exactly right. Like, you don't want to mess up. And it's so easy to cut something that you're not supposed to. It's so easy to forget to put something away because you don't know what it is. Yeah, that's my advice. Be nice to yourself. And also, if they don't value you, move on. Go to a different clinic. There is not enough time to waste it at something that sucks your soul away. So now that we've done like our life lessons, like, what was the biggest factor in you applying to vet school, and what really made you love LSU as well?
Like I said, I think the deciding factor in like, okay, I'm doing this thing is when my dad told me, he was like, I was just filled with so much self-doubt. Like 97% of me told myself that, I will never get in. Like, it, not even in a way where it was like, not if but when, like, oh, I won't get in this year, but I'll apply next year. No, I was dead convinced that I'm switching my major, I'm going to be an ag teacher and follow a different passion. Because that is one of my passions, education. So I was like, obviously I'm going to be an ag teacher. That's something I've always been interested in. And maybe when I retire from, veterinary practice, that might be something I look into. But the deciding factor was my dad saying, you can't win the lotto if you don't buy a ticket. And I've applied that to literally everything, because you can rephrase it as just saying, like, why not try? The worst that they can say is no. I say that all the time as well. The worst they can say is no. And the best they can say, it can change your life. I'm going to vet school. Never thought this would happen. And the reason I chose LSU is because I was accepted in the 3, and out of the 3, that one was the closest to home. I've been living 14 hours away from my family for the past 3 years now. It's been hard. I love it here. But I also want to move back a little bit closer, so I'll be Louisiana to Texas instead of Alabama to Texas. Not a huge difference, but a couple hour difference. I also really loved their focus on kind of like mental health, and they started a new curriculum where, you're going to get, I think it's 2 weeks off per semester in the middle of the semester, and sing. Yeah, they're really trying to amp that aspect of the program up, just etc. Like, I have had nothing but positive experiences with them.
It's been really hard for me. It's never a complaint to have multiple acceptances, because you've been waiting for this your whole life. I didn't think that I would get the chance to be a veterinarian right away because I had multiple C's, and still what that counselor had said to me stuck with me. So when I got that, I really saw that the industry valued people who were imperfect, who were resilient, and that's all that I spoke about in my applications. I talked about being a self-starter. On our APVMA, like, McKaylin and I relate a lot because we like to change things. We like to go and try new things, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. And that's why we're here now. And deciding between the vet schools, it was like, how much does the school value not just small but also like large animal work? I don't think it's wrong to value like closeness to home either, or finances, because a big part of my decision was, okay, my grandma is 92 and my dog at home is 13. I am 6.5, 7 hours away. Am I going to be able to see them for the next 4 years if they're still around? And probably not. And it's like, where do you think you're going to be happiest? I thought was the most important thing.
Yeah, so now that we've talked about, why we chose our vet school out of our few acceptances, what are some of your hopes for vet school? Just in general, talking about vet school specifically, not necessarily after. We talked about wanting to go into mixed animal. We've got that point across. What do you hope for vet school?
I'm honestly terrified. I don't know if you are too. I have been talking a lot to the vets that I work for, and they say it's hard, but it's not impossible. So in undergrad, we have very difficult classes like chemistry, which I did not love. Physics I really liked, though. Physics taught me how to study, and it's just going to be a bunch of material. So I'm really hoping that I can learn how to retain that much material and not just drop it all. I also am excited to meet like the best friends of my life. I'm very terrified for vet school because it's such a challenge. But it's not the same way that undergrad will be because we're not taking chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics. It's more like a fire hydrant, like drinking out of a fire hydrant. So just learning how to study in a different way. I'm very excited for the privilege and the ability that this knowledge will give us. Like, they are teaching us how to save lives. And I know we learn like the basics in vet school. Well, more than the basics, but we learn general practice in vet school. I'm really excited to take away from it and then be able to like incorporate holistic medicine and travel around the world and see all kind of animals because I'm open to that. What about you, Michaela? What are you hoping to get out of vet school?
I think that I have been lucky enough to see multiple fields in the veterinary medicine world. You know, I've seen the pathology, I've seen small animal, mixed animal, whatever. I'm really excited to go into specialty, see what they have to offer. You know, I know there's some insanely niche things. I was talking to a fourth year vet student at Auburn, and they were saying, oh, I just got off of equine ophthalmology. And I was like, that's a thing? I was like, that's a
Wow.
job? I was like, that's a little too niche for me, but that's crazy. So I'm really excited to learn the intricacies of the field, even if it's not something I'll specialize in one day. For example, I'm in parasitology at Auburn right now, and it is my favorite class ever, probably like a easy second of like my favorite classes ever taken. It feels so applicable and like similar to what I'll be learning in vet school, like clinical scenarios. I'm terrified as well. I honestly just feel like so unprepared. It doesn't matter how many vet students you talk to, how many admissions boards you talk to, you don't know what you're getting yourself into until you're there. And that applies to just about every undergrad and vet school, I believe. But yeah, I'm terrified, but I'm so excited.
Me too. It's going to be great. All my friends that I've seen go into vet school, I've ran into them and it looks like their soul is gone. I'm like, oh, please make sure I'm okay. But
I know,
it's
checking
an
in on
adjustment.
people.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Checking in on your people. You know, you'll have a community. It's such a tight, seems like such a tight knit. You know, you're stuck with 100 people. I've had that experience in high school, graduating with 40 people. So I get the vibe, sadly. But at the same time, like, I saw somebody that goes to Auburn Vet School now, and it's her first year, and she is the most bright, fun, energetic person around. And I saw her like knees to chest smoking a cigarette
Yes.
on a wall outside of the vet school, and I was like, "Are you okay?" It was so awful. And she's like, "I just started smoking cigarettes," and I was like, "Oh, cool! Looking forward to that." I don't know,
Exactly.
terrified but excited.
Terrified
All
but
right, well, do you have any final words today?
I have time to do rapid fire real quick if you want.
Okay, sounds good to me. Yeah, so we started this, I think, in our Pre-Vet Journeys episode of the APVMA interview series, where we started doing rapid fire questions at the end, like something silly and fun to end the episode off with, and we did it with Dr. King. That one was fun as well. And
Yeah.
today we have some slightly different ones to kind of talk about more about us and just something fun to get your mind off of vet med. So, Gretel, what's your go-to coffee or tea order?
I've given up coffee for the most part because actually, guys, it makes you less anxious and you do sleep better and you do feel better and happier when you don't have it. It's true. So I've switched to like very low caffeine like tea, like chai or matcha. And I always add lavender to the matcha. Yeah. What about you, Michaela?
That's so hard. I was such a huge coffee person up until like January of this year. I tried my first energy drink and I was just like, something about the coffee, eating coffee on or drinking coffee on an empty stomach was making my stomach feel a little funny. So I was like, I need to start doing something else instead of my caffeine in. So I started drinking energy drinks. I hope to get off of that this month. To be honest, I kind of hate it. But as far as coffee, I'd say something caramel. I'm so basic when it comes to that. But I always am trying something new. There's a coffee shop in Auburn that has like 1 million menu options and I never know what to do. But if it's December, the gingerbread oat milk, iced gingerbread oat milk chai or something from Starbucks is so good. I love a chai latte, an iced chai latte.
I do too.
All right, let's see.
Morning person or night person? I'm definitely a morning person. My bedtime is like 9:30 p.m. Like if you call me at 11, I'm gonna be mad.
I feel like a lot of my friends are like that. I am definitely a night owl. I get all of my homework, all of my real work, everything done at night, and I would rather sleep until 10 and stay up till 2. Like, that is what I'm happiest doing. I know that that's not realistic, but That's one thing that I love about rural med. I can do a lot of work at night and hopefully get a later start to the day and start making appointments later in the day when I own my own practice.
Oh, definitely true. Guilty
That's
pleasure
like
TV
a
show.
life goal of mine.
Life goal, not working mornings. I love mornings.
I want to work a 5 to 9, not a 9 to 5. I'm gonna be so
Exactly.
honest. All right, what is a habit or a mindset shift that's changed your life the most?
Working towards building your career instead of trying to get into vet school. Because you're never going to be happy if you're always trying to work just to get into vet school. Like, build something that matters to you and that will support you in the future. Because it changes it. Because, say you don't get in your first try, well, you have a whole setup that's going to help you with your career. That's only going to make you stronger the next time. And you're not going to feel like alone, like you would if you just did things you didn't care about just to get into vet school.
Mine would probably be really focusing on connecting with people. I grew up with the same, 100 people my entire life. And moving to Auburn, I had to learn to open myself up. I was always extroverted, but I didn't know how to meet new people. So making connections with people and getting close to them, whether it be through PBMA or my job, anything like that, has been a game changer and makes everything so much more enjoyable. Going to work when you have a friend at work is so fun. Hello. So that's probably mine. And our last question, if people could remember just one thing about you, what would you want it to be?
I don't need my name remembered or anything like that, or specifically what I did. But my goal in every job is that we improve it, we add more opportunities for students. And finally, like, whatever I do, I've trained the team to carry it on without me. And if you leave something and it crumbles without you, then I don't think you've done a good enough job. Like, you need to support your team and train them because it's not about you. It's about what legacy is being left behind to help others. That's what I would say.
I'd say mine's kind of similar to the last question, but I hope people always remember that, like, I would never ever do anything to make anyone feel anything less than deserving of anything that they want. I'm here to help and serve. I have a heart for service, and in literally any way possible, whether it's just staying up pulling an all-nighter with you or, really giving you some good pre-vet advice on something that you were questioning me about. That's what I hope I always give to people, is something to live by, whether it be just the fact that you should take the time out of your day to check on your people and really spend time with friends while you can, or just anything that I really strive for. I hope that they take away, my mind.
Definitely. Thinking who we are outside of vet med, which is going to be a future episode. So thank you guys for listening.
Yes, thank you guys for listening, and we'll be posting our next episode relatively soon, and keep an eye out for that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Yes, thanks guys. Bye.